السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I'd like to start off with two things that really captured my attention as Sheikh Shadi was speaking. The analogy he gave that your parents or our parents are fruits. I love fruits, so that analogy works for me. So Jazakallah khair, that's a mind shift for me. So it's going to inshallah take my relationship with my parents to the next level. The second one is the suggestion by Sheikh Shadi, and which was emphasized by our moderator, respected moderator, Jazakallah khair, is actually to send a text message or at least go and tell your parent or your daughter or your son that you really love them and appreciate them. And make it sincere. I have a very special experience with this. About 9 years ago, I was doing a show, a daily Ramadan show in Huda TV. So I was out of town. I was in Egypt. And I was doing the show live. And that specific episode was about parents. What about being good to parents? So, and I thought of a practical kind of advice to give people, and it was simply call your parent, your father or your mother, or both of them, and tell them from the bottom of your heart how much you appreciate everything they've done for you. But I've taken an oath on myself that before I give any advice to the audience or the viewers, that I'll do it myself. My relationship with my parents is very good, but it's very formal as well. That's the kind of culture I grew up in. So I never had the guts in my life to go to my dad face to face and tell him, Dad, I love you. I would just melt out of embarrassment. So what I thought of, I said, okay, I'm in a different country. I tried to call my mom, but I couldn't get through. So what I did, I sent her a text message, and I said, I just want to tell you one thing, that I appreciate everything you and my dad have done for us. So now I could actually appear on screen, having fulfilled that kind of thing, and I advise people to do it. A month later, I go back home and I meet my mom, and she says, what made you send that message? She had no clue about that episode. So I told her the story. She said, do you know what? She said, I was traveling. She was in France, in Paris. She had a connection in Paris airport, international airport. It was for about 3 hours. And because she's covered, unfortunately, there were some people there who treated her really badly, showing some contempt and Islamophobia kind of stuff. So she felt lonely and alone and a bit depressed. So she said, I sat on the bench, really feeling so bad. And at that moment, my phone received a message. I opened the message and I read it, and it made my day. So you don't know. It's just a simple act like this could make the day for your parent, or maybe for your daughter or your son. So just go ahead and do it. Don't hesitate. Break that kind of barrier. It will open a new horizon for you. And ever since, subhanAllah, I'd say my relationship with my parents has really grown exponentially. So now I can say to my dad, Dad, I really love you. I don't need to feel embarrassed about it. And it just takes the relationship to the next level. Okay. Khadija, radiyallahu anha. This topic is very emotional for me. And the reason I love this topic is that Khadija is a school of thought. Khadija radiyallahu anha is a legacy. And I think she's underappreciated among Muslims, generally speaking. We don't really appreciate Khadija. Most of us love attention. We love people who make lots of noise and create a lot of havoc and clamor in their lives. But the people who probably do the most powerful or impactful change in our societies are people who work silently. And usually these are the sisters. Now let me side a bit with the sisters. Usually sisters do their work silently without uttering a word, and they make a huge difference. And most of the work goes unappreciated. And I see this as an advantage. because hopefully this is something that will strengthen their sincerity. So you don't need people's praise, you don't need people's recognition, you don't need their appreciation of what you do. So this actually paves the way for you to be sincere in everything you do. And hopefully it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who appreciates what you do. There's a beautiful hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says, أحب الناس إلى الله كل مخموم القلب طاهر اللسان. Amongst the dearest people to Allah, the most beloved people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is a person who does not seek recognition or attention. He wants to live this life unnoticed, but their tongue is pure and their heart is sincere. So on the day of judgment, this person will stand out. Maybe in this life they won't be appreciated, they won't be like pointed to or held in high esteem, yet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala these people will probably be in the highest ranks in paradise because of sincerity, because what really matters with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our sincerity. Khadija radiyallahu anha is the perfect example of this. She lived her life and she sacrificed her wealth, her own well-being for the sake of the Islamic da'wah, and yet she received no worldly rewards. She didn't see the victory of Islam. She never witnessed it. She died at probably one of the lowest points in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And basically what this means is that Allah has saved her the reward on the day of judgment. And actually she received the glad tidings in her life about this. One day the Prophet ﷺ was at home and Jibreel descends to him. He approaches him. So Jibreel says to the Prophet ﷺ, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Allah has sent me down and He's telling you Khadija is about to come home. She was out, she was doing something out and she just came back home. So, and Allah tells you Khadija is now approaching home. So tell her when she comes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending her His greetings and He is giving her glad tidings of a special house built for her in paradise. That was during the life of Khadija radiyallahu anha. Khadija was, as I said, Khadija is not only a person, she's not a normal person. She's a legacy, she's a school of thought, she's a role model, not only for sisters but even for brothers. She's an exemplary that we should really hold in high esteem and learn from, practical stuff. Just to give you an idea what kind of person Khadija was one of the most respected women in the tribe of Quraysh, in Mecca in general. She was a very wealthy woman, she was a businesswoman. So the first trait that we can actually recognize about Khadija was that she was a proactive person. She had a sense of initiative. She was an entrepreneur. So she had her own business and she would hire or employ men to lead her caravans, which some books of history mention that some of her caravans amounted to thousands of camels carrying goods, traveling to Syria, Palestine, and even to India. So for those who study international business, Khadija was there 1400 years before us. She was doing international business. That was Khadija. So she was very wealthy. She was a very resourceful woman. One day, there was a man who really wanted to have a son, a male, a boy. But his wife, like for a few times, has only given birth to daughters, girls. So he was completely frustrated. And one day she was like in her 9th month of pregnancy. And he just said to her, listen, if it's going to be a girl this time, these are the last days in your life. I'm going to kill you. So, you know, it's among our cultures sometimes we hold women responsible for the gender of the child, but actually science shows us it's actually the father that decides. It's the father's sperm, type of sperm, that decides, you know, the sex or the gender of the child. So the woman really felt petrified, so she went to Waraq ibn Nawfal. Waraq ibn Nawfal Who knows Waraqa ibn Nawfal? Who is Waraqa ibn Nawfal? Who is Waraqa ibn Nawfal? Especially the younger brothers, the younger sisters. Who's Waraqa ibn Nawfal? He's not your neighbor, he's not my neighbor. He doesn't live in Durban or Cape Town. Waraqa ibn Nawfal, come on guys. Sisters? Huh? He was what? Cousin? Come on sisters, I thought you were going to do better than the brothers. It was her uncle. He was her uncle, and he actually converted to Christianity, and he studied the Torah and the Gospels and all that stuff, and he converted into Christianity from paganism. And basically the woman sought shelter with Waraqa ibn Nawfal, because he was a respected man, and no one would actually violate his protection. So she went there and she gave birth, and it was a girl. So she stayed at the house of Waraqa ibn Nawfal, who was an old man at the time, and he was blind. So then the man came back to his senses, the husband, and he approached Waraqa ibn Nawfal and he said, I really regret the threats that I made to my wife. I really want her back. I want to take care of her and take care of the daughter as well. So I accept reality. So he said, then he justified his position. He said, I'm struggling financially. I've been always struggling, and I need sons who can actually work, grow up to work, help me financially in the future. That's the reason I felt bad about having a daughter. So Waraqa ibn Nawfal said, don't worry about this. There's a woman, she's my niece, Khadija. You go to her and she's going to find you a job. She was a resourceful woman. So the guy went to Khadija radiallahu anha, and she gave him a full-time job. So she would send him with the caravans to travel and make trade for her. So she was a resourceful woman. She was in community kind of support and work. So she was an activist. She was an activist, an entrepreneur. You could see the breadth of her character and her personality. So then Khadija was acquainted with the people of Mecca, and she noticed the Prophet Muhammad that was before prophethood. He was a very special breed of human beings. So she developed this interest in her. She had been married before and she was divorced, but she developed that interest, and that shows that there's nothing wrong with a woman looking for a good husband, but don't violate, the norms of society by doing something that might actually constitute a slight to your honor or cause people to talk about you. So she was aware of the norms of her society. She developed that interest in the Prophet ﷺ. Some books of history mention that she had employed him in some of her trade caravans, and she saw his honesty, she admired him, and she saw that it was a very perfect fit between her and Muhammad ﷺ. She didn't approach him herself, but she sent one of her friends. Her friend went to the Prophet ﷺ, somehow met him. She was a relative as well to the Prophet ﷺ. So she told him, why don't you get married? So Muhammad ﷺ at the time said, well, I don't have enough wealth to really get married at the moment. I just need to get better off financially. So she said, why don't you marry Khadija? Khadija is already wealthy. She's a very good woman, a noble woman, highly respected in Quraysh, and you seem to be a perfect match. The Prophet ﷺ said, can I ask for her hand? Can I propose for her? She said, why not? Just go to her uncle, Amr ibn Asad. Go to her uncle. So the Prophet ﷺ actually went to her uncle. Khadija had already agreed with her uncle and explained to him the situation, so he was ready to cooperate. But there was a big hurdle. And the big hurdle was her father. Her father had some kind of attitude against Muhammad ﷺ, or probably his family, the family of Abdul Muttalib. So he refused to marry Muhammad ﷺ to Khadija. Now Khadija, being resourceful, intelligent, what did she do? She didn't stop there. She didn't say, okay, that's the end of this love story. No, she decided to take things or matters in her own hands, but in a very intelligent way. What she did, she invited her father's friends for a feast, and they ate the food. And it was the habit the tradition among the people of Quraysh, after a big feast they would drink alcohol. So Khadija brought lots of alcohol, Yeah, that was before Islam. Alcohol was the norm. In other words, she organized a cocktail party for them. They came, they drank, okay? They all became drunk. Then she came to her father, and he was obviously completely out. She said, Muhammad is asking for my hand. You're going to say yes. He said, yeah, no problem. You'll marry him. And they had this tradition. They had some kind of a chain that they would adorn with pieces of cloth and flowers. And when a father gave his daughter in marriage or agreed to that marriage, they would place that chain on his neck or around his neck. So Khadija had this already prepared. She put it on her father's neck. And they celebrated it in the cocktail party. So they were happy about it. A few hours later, he wakes up to the brutal fact. He looks at this and says, what's this? She said, you've just, married me to Muhammad. He said, no way. She said, you've done this in front of the honorable men of Quraysh, your friends here. They're still here. They said, yes, you just did. So he was stuck. And Khadija was married to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Okay, sisters, don't organize any cocktail parties, please. But what we want is the sense of initiative and really being so, I would say, resourceful. Being resourceful. I need to be resourceful. I have 10 minutes and I have to squeeze everything in that time. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ married Khadija, and they were like the best, perfect husband and wife. There was love in the house. The Prophet ﷺ, a respectable man, very kind to his family. Khadija has this motherly character, this motherly attitude. So the Prophet ﷺ really was so fortunate to have someone like Khadija. Now let me challenge some of the long-held beliefs. Yeah, it's not a big issue, but it's something good actually to talk about. How old was the Prophet ﷺ when he married Khadija? Let me see. Please, sisters, I'll side with the brothers first. Let me see. How old was the Prophet ﷺ when he married Khadija? 25. You sure? Okay. 25. How old was Khadija? That's for the sisters. 40? 40? 42? Make your mind up. 40. Okay. This narration is mentioned in the books of Sirah, the books of history. Specifically, the main source was Sirat ibn Ishaq, which is one of the main sources of the Sirah of the Prophet ﷺ. But this is a very weak narration. Actually, it has no chain of narrators. So it's just a historical narration. All the narrations about the age of Khadija are weak. All of them. Or there is no chain of narration altogether. The strongest among them states that the age of Khadija when she married the Prophet ﷺ was 28. 28. To me, that from the science of hadith perspective, okay, that's the strongest opinion. From a logical perspective, that makes lots of sense, because if a woman gets married at the age of 40 or 42, how could she have 5 children after that? And there was some space between them, by the way. There was some gaps between them. How could that be? It's very unlikely. So, probably she was 28. Probably she was 28. So I side with that, but it's not a big deal. It's not a big issue. The Prophet ﷺ loved Khadija, she loved him, she supported him. And the most important moment was when the Prophet ﷺ first met Jibreel, when he was in Ghar Hira. Well, obviously the Prophet ﷺ would spend a month in Ghar Hira. And imagine what kind of woman who would allow her husband to leave for a month, and she would go on every other day and go and give him the food, the provisions that he needed for the next couple of days. She would go out of her way, out of Mecca. And you've been to Ghar Hira, you've seen how far it is from Mecca, from where the Haram is. So she would actually do this. And sometimes she would stay with him for the whole month in Ghar Hira. This is not a known fact, but Khadija used to do this as well with the Prophet ﷺ, contemplating and thinking and introspecting about the meaning of life and about what this world was all about. So, when the Prophet ﷺ received or first met Jibreel, he was overcome by fear, and confusion. He didn't know what it was. And just think about the context. The Arabs believed in superstition, believed in they had some crazy explanations about certain phenomena, supernatural phenomena. So basically when the Prophet ﷺ came to Khadija, he was overcome by fear. When he came to her, he found her composed and firm and strong. She maintained her emotional balance when the Prophet, and her calm. So when the Prophet ﷺ came, he found her very calm. And probably this is something very important in counseling. When someone is really emotionally troubled, if you are so calm, you can absorb the state of being emotionally troubled, and you can actually help them calm down and think more clearly. That was natural. That came naturally to Khadija radiallahu anha. And so she said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he narrated to her what happened, she said, "Don't worry, calm down. Calm down, don't worry. You are a person who helps the weak, you feed the poor, you take care of your guests, and you're an ethical person. You're a moral person, and Allah is not going to cause harm to come to you." What kind of attitude that is, what kind of understanding. It shows the depth. It shows, I would say, the moral intelligence Khadija radiallahu anha had. She could read, she could interpret that situation so intelligently and so deeply, and she could see actually through it, and she could think about the conclusions that this must be something good. But apparently, on the face value, okay, this is something troubling and scary at the time of the Arabs at that stage. But she was so calm and she could see through it. She said, "Allah la yukhzik, Allah will never disgrace you. So don't worry about this." She could actually link someone's attitudes, behaviors, character to what Allah is going to bring to them. Just as Sheikh Shadi said during his talk, what goes around comes around. Some people call this karma. It comes from the Eastern religions or Eastern philosophies. But there's basis to it. Okay, what goes around comes around. Khadija was aware of this. So she had this depth, this understanding. She supported the Prophet ﷺ, and then she supported the da'wah financially to the extent that she spent all her wealth. Everything. Khadija was amongst the richest of Mecca. Very rich. Now we're talking about like multi-millionaires. She was a multi-millionaire. She lost, or she spent all her wealth for the sake of Allah. And she didn't see any actual results, any tangible results. She passed away before that. But Allah has saved for her, prepared for her something better in the hereafter. During the boycott or the embargo, when the Muslims were placed in the Shi'b, okay, during the Meccan period, and they were boycotted completely. No trade, no business, no gifts, no interactions with them, no marital relations, no social relations. They were completely cut off Mecca. The only one who could smuggle food into that kind of camp was Khadija. That shows you how much resourceful she was. She had so many connections, she could actually use her connections, and she broke the embargo so many times. So she saved lives, because some Muslims actually died out of hunger during that stage. Then she passed away by the end of that embargo. After it was lifted, she passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with her. Now we want to finish or conclude with one story that shows how much the Prophet ﷺ, or two stories actually, how much the Prophet ﷺ appreciated Khadija. She was on his mind throughout the rest of his life until he died. After the Battle of Badr, the Muslims captured how many captives from Quraysh? Battle of Badr, there were 70 people who died from among the army of Quraysh, and there were how much taken captive? Brothers, sisters, uncles, aunties. No one knows? No, come on. 70. Excellent. What's your name? Ahmed. MashaAllah. Well done, Ahmed. Double correct answers. You got it twice. Okay, yes, 70 captives. From among them was someone called Al-As ibn al-Rabi'. Al-As ibn al-Rabi'. He was a non-Muslim at the time. He was in the army of Quraysh. Now, he was taken captive, then they were given the opportunity to be ransomed by their families. Al-As ibn al-Rabi', who was his family? She was Zainab. Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, the daughter of Khadija radiyallahu anha, and she was in Mecca, but she was Muslim, still married to that non-Muslim man. So every family sent money to ransom and to free their family member, and then something special came to ransom Abu al-As ibn al-Rabi'. The Prophet ﷺ got hold of it and he looked at it and he cried. He looked at that and he took a while. And it was a necklace that Zainab sent to ransom her husband. Why did the Prophet ﷺ cry? Because this was Khadija's necklace. She gave it to Zainab as a wedding gift. And actually Khadija was the one who married Abu al-As ibn al-Rabi' to Zainab, because Abu al-As ibn al-Rabi' was her nephew and he was a very noble man. So the Prophet ﷺ remembered Khadija. So he said to the companions, if you can free this man and then send Zainab her necklace back, this has a special value. The Muslims agreed. So they freed Al-As ibn Wa'il. The Prophet ﷺ told him, I want Zainab to come here. He said, you'll get that. So he later on sent Zainab to Medina and she joined the Prophet ﷺ, and he later became a Muslim and they were reunited. The last example or story I want to mention was that Aisha got really fed up one day about how much the Prophet ﷺ praised Khadija. So she got so fed up, she said, what's wrong with that? You keep mentioning Khadija. She's an old lady that Allah has taken away, and Allah has given you something better, somebody better. The Prophet ﷺ was offended, and he told her, Khadija was the only one who believed in me when everyone disbelieved in me. She was my only friend when everyone was my enemy. She was the only one who supported me when everyone let me down. And she was, and she was, and she was, and she was. And Aisha said, I really wish that he just, stopped mentioning her good, traits and characteristics. Then the Prophet ﷺ for 2 months kept mentioning Khadija to Aisha, praising her for everything she's done. Now, not only sisters need to be like Khadija, even brothers, because these are universal traits. So what I could conclude with is actually Khadija was proactive, was resourceful, was supportive and motherly. So she did a lot of social work, she did business, entrepreneurship, and she was very proactive. She would pursue the best for herself, and she would observe the norms of her society and not go blatantly against them. She was a very intelligent woman, and this is why she deserves the best from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What can you do, inshallah, what can we do to become like Khadija? Inshallah, this is something I'll talk about in my next talk, which is a look in the mirror. I'll connect both topics because they are strongly related anyway. Jazakumullah khair wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.